I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. Melbourne has finally decided that it wants to remember that it's supposed to be summer, so it's really hot here in my apartment and I've got the studio lights on and I'm just melting. Okay, I did not read very much this week. Well, I read a lot more than most people would, but I didn't read as much for me because I am so tired. But that's okay, we have 2 more days of school left for the year. And then we are on Christmas break and summer holidays, so I will reclaim some of my sanity over the next couple of weeks. But in all fairness, there was just a lot going on. We had graduation for our Year 6 students and general moving and packing up the classroom because I'm coming out of my classroom next year. It's just been a lot, and I just had to accept that some nights I got home and I just needed to not do anything, which is totally fine. So all that said, I did read 4 things this week and I'm okay with that. The first thing that I read was the second book in the Saint View Psychos series. This is by Elthorpe. I had to remember which Saint View series this was. This is a Why Choose polyamorous series. In fact, all of the Saint View trilogies are like that. So this is the second trilogy that I have read. This is the second book in the Saint View Psychos and it follows Bliss. In the very first book, her brother is killed and she finds that out from his best friend Nash. She's always had a crush on Nash, but they haven't seen each other in many years. And it turns out that Nash and her brother own this bar called St. View Psychos. The bar is a front for a sex club. And because her brother has passed, Bliss now inherits that. And there's a whole lot of things that happen in the first book. The first book does end on a cliffhanger with a potential SA occurring. Bliss is saved by Scythe, who is the alter personality of a character called Vincent, who we met in the St. View Prison series. He's one of my favourite characters. And then the final character that we follow is War, who has inherited the title of president of the local MC club in the previous book. And there is a lot of complicated stuff going on with the 4 of these characters in this book. I can't really talk too much about it because it spoils it, because each of these books ends on a cliffhanger, so you have to keep reading. I meant to get to the final book this week. I didn't have it in me to do that this week, but I'm hoping to get to it next week because I would like to finish out this trilogy before the end of the year as well. I'm enjoying it. They're just entertaining. They're reasonably predictable in a good way. I don't really know where the story is going. It's not that kind of predictable. It's just predictable in sort of the beats that the story hits. And I like that kind of read because it makes it comfortable. But anyway, it is quite violent, but yeah, there's some interesting things going on, so I can't wait to finish it. Then I read the next 2 episodes in the Criminal Intentions Season 1 series by Cole McCade. I read book 5, it's Witchcraft, and book 6, Where There's Smoke. This series follows Malcolm and Shang-Jae. They are 2 police detectives in Baltimore. Again, we're kind of in the middle of the series. Each episode or each book is its own standalone story, but there is an overarching plot that has been in place since book 1. I'm not going to talk about the individual stories, more just sort of the overall feel that I get from the series, because this has honestly in 2 weeks become the biggest comfort read for me. And to be honest, if I was to read anything this week, it was going to be more of these books. And I love these characters so much. I love the supporting cast as well. There's a really great, very diverse cast of characters in this book, which feels natural and not forced. Not like the author is trying to shoehorn in all of these various identities for people, but just that they exist in this world. And while the content of these books can be quite gruesome and violent because both characters are homicide detectives, so they're dealing with the worst of the worst and they're seeing the worst of the worst. There's a lot of discussion around how that affects a person, about the kind of person who goes into a career like that. There's a lot of discussion around how police treat victims and suspects, and I appreciate that discussion because it's not shying away from the problematic nature of being a detective or a cop. And those discussions are really frank, and the actual main characters are having that conversation as well as everyone around them. I think I mentioned last week when I was talking about the first 4 books in the series that I think Cole McCade does an incredible job with the content and trigger warnings at the start of every book, because there is a lot in every book, and McCade is really good at just sort of outlining in detail when and where you find those trigger warnings or those triggers in the book and why they've been included, and you know, if you can skip them or not. So I think that's really important. As I said, I don't think anyone does them as detailed as I've seen in this series, which is great. I would suggest that if you are planning on picking up this series, and I highly recommend it if you like romantic suspense, that you do. I will say that in this part of the series, we do actually get to see Malcolm and Xiangxie admit their feelings and start to do something about it, which is what I've been hanging out for the first half of the season. And it was just great because the tension and the build-up and the relationship between these two characters, who start off very antagonistic towards one another because neither of them want to be partners with anyone, and they have very different methods. And through the course of the last couple of books, we've seen them have to go through working together, but then also having to work independently when someone is injured, and then having to deal with the realities of people's lives. So Malcolm was formerly married and his wife is back in Baltimore, and so they have a complicated relationship dynamic, which in turn complicates Malcolm and Xiangxie's relationship and Xiangxie's relationship with Malcolm's ex-wife. And the whole thing feels very human in that relationships are messy. And I appreciate that so much. And the little things that we learn about all of these characters over the 6 books is just incredible. So yes, I'm still aiming to finish the series by the end of, or the first season by the end of the year. I think I can probably do that because they're actually really quite short and they're very fast to read. And then the last book that I read this week was From Cocktails to Sleigh Bells by Ren K. Morris. This is a Christmas novella. It is the relationship between Santa and a bartender slash bar owner. So Nicole, or Cole as she's known, owns a bar. She inherited it from her father, and her father had started this tradition of weird, inappropriate Christmas jumpers on Christmas Day because she's like, well, Christmas Eve. And so she's just finished the Christmas Eve shift. She's got her jumper, which is hilarious, and she's walking home and she slips on some black ice and falls and sort of hits her head. And unbeknownst to her, Chris, the CEO of Santa Enterprises, has been watching her. He's finished his shift delivering presents. The rest of his team is finishing up delivering their presents, and he just happens to see her and he's watching her walk home, and he's immediately smitten, and then he sees her slip. And so he goes over to help her. And understandably, when she wakes up in the arms of a strange man, she attacks him because you go girl. And then he convinces her that he means her no harm, and he offers to check out her injuries, and they end up going back to his little house, which turns out to be kind of, you know, this house that can appear anywhere in the world because it's Santa's house and it travels to and from. And anyway, it was very steamy. It was pretty short. It was a really interesting take on sort of the Santa present delivery sort of story, and it was just a nice, fun, easy read. So definitely one to add to the Christmas romance lists if you haven't tried it already. So that's it for this week. A very short books beside my bed video. I will hopefully have more next week. I do have a vlog coming out that is a weekend reading vlog where I'm reading some more novellas for a specific project, so stay tuned. There are more books coming from this past week. But yeah, that's about it from me. I hope that you guys are doing well. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Alternatively, feel free to share a cocktail emoji down below if you just want to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.